The promise of a world reborn. Before the world learned the name of the final prophet, it was taught the story of the first. Before the Qur'an descended upon the mountains of Mecca, the heavens bore witness to a conversation that would define humanity's entire existence. When the angels themselves questioned our creation, what secret did the Almighty know that could justify our place on earth? And mention when your Lord said to the angels, "Indeed, I will make upon the earth a successive authority." They said, "Will you place upon it one who causes corruption therein and sheds blood, while we declare your praise and sanctify you?" He said, "Indeed, I know that which you do not know." Surah Al-Baqarah, chapter 2, verse 30. In an age long past, a world still green and new, the children of Adam, peace be upon him, walked the earth. Generations had passed since the garden, and humanity flourished in the fertile crescent between the great rivers of Mesopotamia. They were a people blessed with a pure, unblemished legacy, the knowledge of the one true God, a sacred inheritance from their father Adam. Their society was built on fitra, the natural, innate instinct to worship the Creator alone. There were no idols of stone, no corrupt priests, no convoluted mythologies. There was only humanity, living in a state of grace, their hearts turned towards the heavens in simple, direct devotion. Among this first community were men whose piety was legendary. Their names, Wad, Suwa, Yaguth, Ya'uk, and Nasr, became synonymous with righteousness. They were not prophets, but living saints, men whose every action was a testament to their love for Allah. When these titans of faith eventually passed away, a palpable void was left. The people felt a deep sense of loss, yearning for the spiritual inspiration their presence had provided. It was in this moment of collective grief that the ancient enemy, Iblis, saw his opening. The whisper of deception was subtle, disguised as an act of piety. As authoritative scholars of tafsir, like Ibn Abbas, narrated, the idea was planted with chilling innocence. Create images of these righteous men, the suggestion came. Not to worship, of course, but simply to remember their devotion. When you look upon their likeness, you will be inspired to worship Allah with the same fervor they possessed. The logic was tragically persuasive. It seemed harmless, even noble. So the first generation of mourners erected statues in their honor. These monuments served as focal points for remembrance. Seeing the noble figure of Wad, a person would be reminded of his long nights in prayer and feel their own faith rekindle. For a time, the core belief in one God remained untouched. But Iblis plays the long game. The trap was not for that generation, but for their children. As time passed, the original purpose of the statues began to blur. The next generation saw their elders gathering at these monuments, but the stories of why they were built grew faint. The whisper of Iblis returned, now more direct, more poisonous. "Do you think your fathers merely stood before these stones?" it hissed. No. They knew these righteous men held a special station with God. They sought their intercession. It was through them that your ancestors asked for rain, for bountiful harvests, for protection. Slowly, insidiously, the seed of shirk, the one unforgivable sin of associating partners with Allah, began to sprout. What began as remembrance twisted into veneration. Veneration became supplication. Soon, people were no longer praying to God at the statues. They were praying to the statues themselves. They offered sacrifices to lifeless stone, believing these carvings held sway over their destiny. The pure, monotheistic legacy of Adam was shattered, buried under the weight of humanity's first great act of idolatry. The world, once illuminated by a single truth, was plunged into spiritual darkness. Into this lost world, Allah, in His infinite mercy, sent a rescuer. From amongst the people, He raised a man of profound integrity, wisdom, and an unshakable inner faith. His name was Nuh, Noah, peace be upon him, a direct descendant of Adam, whose heart had remained pure amidst the spreading corruption. He looked at the misguided rituals of his people, at the divine truth they had abandoned, and a deep sorrow filled him. He was the messenger chosen to call humanity back from the brink, the single light tasked with reclaiming a world lost in shadow. His mission was about to begin, a heroic journey of almost unbelievable patience and heart-wrenching sacrifice that would span nearly 1,000 years. 950 years of tears. The mission entrusted to Nuh, peace be upon him, was a marathon of the soul. For 950 years, his voice was the only one in the world calling humanity back to its Creator. The Qur'an captures the sheer, staggering scale of his effort in his own desperate plea to Allah, a summary of a lifetime of thankless struggle. He said, "My Lord, indeed I have invited my people night and day, but my invitation has not increased them except in flight. And indeed, every time I invited them to be forgiven by you, they put their fingers in their ears, covered themselves with their garments, persisted, and were arrogant with great arrogance." Surah Nuh, chapter 71, 5-7. Imagine the scene. For centuries, Nuh walked among his people in their marketplaces and their homes, his voice resonating with a desperate love. "O my people," he would cry, with the same timeless call of every prophet, "worship Allah. You have no deity other than Him. Indeed, I fear for you the punishment of a momentous day." Surah Al-Araf, 759. His message was a simple restoration of the truth. He demanded no wage, sought no status. He only wanted to save them from themselves. Their response was a wall of pride and mockery. The wealthy elites, whose power was intertwined with the idol-worshipping cults, led the charge against him. Their arguments, preserved for all time in the Qur'an, exposed the corrupt psychology of disbelief. First, they attacked his humanity, unable to accept guidance from one they saw as a peer. The eminent among those who disbelieved from his people said, "We do not see you but as a man like ourselves." Surah Hud 11:27. Second, they attacked his followers with classist disdain. The believers were the poor, the marginalized, the outcasts, and in the eyes of the elite, their very presence discredited the message. They sneered, "And we do not see you followed by anyone except the most humble of us. We think you are liars." Surah Hud 11:27. They even had the audacity to demand that Nuh expel his poor followers as a condition for them to listen, a demand he powerfully rejected, declaring he would never abandon those who had faith in Allah. Finally, when their arguments failed, they resorted to the last refuge of the intellectually bankrupt: ridicule. As the decades stretched into centuries, tormenting Noah became a cultural pastime. They branded him a madman, a deluded fool lost in his own fantasies. This torment was not just public, it was intensely personal. The spiritual cancer of disbelief had metastasized within his own home. His own wife, living beside a prophet of God, sided with the mockers, her heart sealed against the truth. And his own son, Yam, chose to align himself with the arrogant chieftains, looking upon his own father with contempt. Yet, through nearly a millennium of this agonizing trial, Noah's resolve never broke. He tried every method imaginable. Then I announced to them and I confided to them secretly. Surah Nuh 71:9. He reasoned, debated, pleaded, and warned, his heart breaking for his people. But their pride was an impenetrable fortress. After 950 years, the point of no return was reached. Noah turned to his Lord in a final, solemn prayer. He had exhausted every avenue. His people were not just disbelievers, they were a source of corruption, ensuring their children would inherit the same spiritual darkness. The scales of divine justice began to tip. Then came the command. It was not a request for more preaching, it was a stark, world-altering instruction that would forever change the face of the planet. Allah's voice came to Noah, signaling the end of an entire civilization.
And construct the ark under our observation and our inspiration. And do not address me concerning those who have wronged, for indeed they are to be drowned. Surah Hud 11:37. The final warning had been issued. The instrument of salvation was now being built by the very man they had ridiculed for a lifetime. The wave like a mountain. The command was given and the work began. As Nuh, peace be upon him, laid the first planks of the colossal ark, the ridicule of his people intensified into a frenzied spectacle. In a dry, dusty valley miles from any sea, the sight of a man building a ship was the ultimate proof of his insanity. And as he was constructing the ark, whenever an assembly of the eminent of his people passed by him, they ridiculed him. Surah Hud 11:38. They would cackle, "First a prophet, now a carpenter, Nuh? Who will push your ship to the water, the wind?" Nuh, now armed with the certainty of divine command, did not engage in lengthy debate. His reply was calm, sharp, and laden with a terrifying prophecy. "If you ridicule us, then we will ridicule you just as you ridicule. And you are going to know who will receive a punishment that will disgrace him, and upon whom will descend an enduring punishment." Surah Hud 11:38-39. He knew a secret they could not fathom. The very ground beneath their feet was about to betray them. When the ark was complete, Allah commanded him to gather the few believers who had endured the centuries of scorn and to take aboard a male and female of every creature. They were the outcasts, the humble, the forgotten, and now they were the sole inheritors of a new world. Once they were all safely aboard, the final sign appeared. Not a word, but an impossible physical event. The oven overflowed. Surah Hud 11:40. From a simple clay oven in Nuh's home, water began to miraculously gush forth. It was the signal. At that moment, the laws of nature were suspended. The heavens tore open, unleashing a deluge of unimaginable fury, while the earth itself fractured, spewing water from deep within its core. So we opened the gates of the heaven, with rain pouring down, and we caused the earth to gush forth with springs, and the waters met for a matter already decreed. Surah Al-Qamar 54:11-12.
The world drowned. As the ark rose on the churning waters, Nuh witnessed a scene of absolute horror. The arrogant chieftains, so confident in their power, were swallowed by the rising tide, their screams lost in the roar of the storm. It is here, in this apocalypse, that the story's most profound and personal tragedy strikes. Nuh's eyes scanned the chaos, and he saw him, his own son, Yam, desperately trying to scramble to higher ground. The instinct of a father, a primal and powerful love, overcame Nuh, and he cried out one last time across the churning waves. And it sailed with them through waves like mountains. And Nuh called to his son, who was apart, "O my son, ride with us, and be not with the disbelievers." Surah Hud, chapter 11, verse 42. This was the final offer of salvation, a father's hand reaching out to his child. But the son, infected with the same disease of pride as the mockers, rejected the divine vessel. He placed his faith in the physical world, in his own perceived strength. He said, "I will take refuge on a mountain to protect me from the water." Surah Hud, chapter 11, verse 43. Nuh's reply was a statement of terrifying reality. There is no protector today from the decree of Allah, except for whom He gives mercy. Surah Hud, chapter 11, verse 43. Before the conversation could continue, the judgment was executed, and the waves came between them, and he was among the drowned. Surah Hud, chapter 11, verse 43. Nuh, the mighty prophet of God, was made to watch his own son perish. The final turning point was that single, arrogant decision to trust a mountain of earth over the promise of God. Yet even in his agony, the love of a father compelled Nuh to turn to his Lord. "My Lord," he cried, "my son is of my family, and your promise is true." It was then that Allah delivered the chilling, definitive lesson that would echo through eternity, defining the very nature of family in His sight. He said, "O Nuh, indeed, he is not of your family. Indeed, he is one whose work was unrighteous. So do not ask me about that which you have no knowledge. Indeed, I advise you, lest you be among the ignorant." Surah Hud, chapter 11, verse 46. The bond of flesh and blood was declared void by the greater reality of faith. Kinship in the eyes of God is forged not in the womb, but in the heart. Humbled and utterly submitted, Nuh repented for his plea. The ark came to rest on Mount Judy, and a new chapter for humanity began, forever scarred by the unforgettable lesson that when the waves of judgment come, not even being a prophet's son can save you, if you have refused to board the ark of faith.